welcome to Atma Global's Coffee and Connect webinar. I hope you have your cup of coffee in hand like I do, and there's no judgment if it's your third cup like this one is for me. I am here outside of Washington, D.C. in Virginia today at my home office, and my name is Liz Vukovic, and I'm the Partner Development Manager for Atma Global. Again, we thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to discuss a topic near and dear to our hearts and our founders' hearts in Jot Denung, and that is why the curriculums matter.
I think that most of us know as educators that the field of education and learning is constantly evolving. And with the advent of technology, with all these different types of multiple resources in video and platforms, we focus a lot on making sure students are learning, so making sure we get them into the classroom. And of course, in the pandemic, that's become even more critical. And we focus a lot on how technology can aid the classroom, whether it's aiding the instructor or the student. But we're not spending enough time, in my opinion, about what exactly are we teaching students, what exactly are in those curriculums. And what we were starting to hear from both the corporate learning market, which I'll talk about as we weave in, but also from educators. Lots of videos out there, lots of resources. How do I know that they're good? How do I know who created them? How do I know they're not biased or they're not inaccurate? I'm an educator, and I particularly write textbooks on international business and global management, and I teach as well. So I know that challenge firsthand. You're busy, you don't have a lot of time, you want to grab some resources, and once upon a time, perhaps you could search on YouTube and find some good things, but no longer can you be sure that those are reliable, no longer can you be sure that those are accurate. So that was one critical factor that I think that we're seeing increasingly in the marketplace. The second, which is really near and dear to my heart, because we uniquely straddle both the corporate learning and higher education, we're seeing a disconnect. We're hearing it from corporations, we're hearing it from educators, that students today are no longer prepared as well to really be functionally operational in the work world right away. And that really drives down to curriculums, especially, for example, in the US. You have 50 states, 50 different sets of curriculums and guidelines and standards and different strands in social sciences by state. And we won't get into the politics of that or the issues behind it, but what it really results into is that students are unevenly prepared for the work world. They're unevenly prepared even to operate at the college level. And I think instructors and college educators see this a lot, right? We see students come in with such varying levels of social sciences background, critical reasoning, writing skills. So really, there's a standardization, if you will, of making sure that there's a baseline level of fact-based knowledge. And where this is applicable on the corporate side is we're hearing from corporations that they actually have to educate their frontline employees or their new employees on some of these basic critical reasoning and fact-based things. You know, it's very hard to have everybody in the work world sort of come to a focus if you have varying understandings of history, for example, right? So that's a disconnect that we see. And then the third, I think that everybody can relate to, and I relate to not just because of my students, but I'm the mom of 3 boys who've gone through college. So students are just more tech savvy, right? They have higher levels of expectations. You can't just use a textbook in the traditional way. This is a social media, Netflix world that really has a higher level of expectation of how technology is useful and integrates in the classroom. So those were the kinds of challenges that I was seeing, that we were seeing, and we wanted to help craft some solutions to.
Talk to me a little bit about why you created Atma Insights.
So we saw these challenges, and once upon a time when we first started, I always like to date myself here, we used to produce, for those of you who have been around for a while, we produced CD-ROMs not so long ago, 10, 12 years ago, they were used heavily in the classroom. One of my driving factors for how we create technology is I really wanted students to be able to see, learners to be able to see a country, see what's going on in the country, have authentic visuals, not just a bunch of talking heads, but really understand what current environment might look like, especially when you dive into understanding business practices, for example. filming our business role scenes. So that morphed into having databases, and some of you may have used our earlier version of a product. It was called Culture Quest, used heavily through college libraries, educators. Pearson's, of course, licensed it for a number of years. And what we saw is the market changed, right? Just like everywhere else, and ed tech has evolved. And we saw an opportunity to make a much more customized, easy, direct to an educator. You no longer have to search through your library at school or search through YouTube. We wanted to make a solution that you can access just like Netflix. And that's how Outland Insights came about. And we're relatively new. But as you know, Liz, we've been delighted to win a few awards. So that's really been a really important feather in our cap.
Tool. What do you feel is the biggest benefit to educators and students that sets this tool apart from other video courseware they might have ability to use?
Well, I think that the most important thing for us is the content, right? So one of the things that we have always prided ourselves on, we're not a video company or a tech company. We're not an ed tech company that creates content, quite the opposite. We are a subject matter expert content team that happens to have in-house tech and video capabilities. And I think this is an important distinction. We take our peer review process, our editorial process, and I know that we have a slide on this, absolutely. We take this process very seriously. So what does this mean? So the first is, how do we develop a content? How do we decide on what countries? How do we decide on what topics? So for example, we know from our corporate side, which is where we marry the two of corporate and education, we know that the G20 are really the most important economies in the world, the most important places that most students are more likely to be engaged with for some sort of business. So we are profiling the G20 countries. We have a very distinct methodology in terms of the number of topics that we track. So we might also take a look at the topics. Being an educator, also having written those textbooks, I know that sometimes you're trying to create a learning lesson, and a visual or a video for today's tech-savvy students can work much wonders, much more than a whole chapter. So for example, we have some really great videos on what is the G20, a very quick and easy lesson that students can understand how all of it fits together. We have topics on globalization, global business ethics, which of course are becoming increasingly more relevant and more important. We have topics by region and also by things like, what is digital currency and how does that operate? So really very current topics that relate to business. But we go from choosing our topic to then creating our subject matter expert teams. And our subject matter expert teams are a source of great pride for me. It's something that as a chief content officer, I spend a lot of time with. All of them have a master's or a PhD in the businesses or the social sciences. They are seasoned folks who may have lived in country. Some are academics as well. They will have been in country more recently, so within the last 3 to 5 years. So somebody who comes with very relevant experience. We have a lead writer or researcher from that team who will develop the content. We track about 80 topics from simple things like historical highlights and understanding the country and the economy, but really, what about this country do you need to understand the mindset? We use cultural anthropology in the backbone, but it's very user friendly, so students are never put off by feeling that they're having another layer of teaching, but really they're having the opportunity to immerse themselves in the learning lesson. One of the reasons we include history, for example, is it's more than just telling people business practices. It's really helping them understand the why. What about this country's history, its society, its economy? What about this country's background has shaped its mindset? And how will that impact you as you're interacting with the people from that culture? Communicating. We then move closer into the business, and the business sections are really our pride and joy as well, where we'll cover sort of the corporate culture at the macro level, but then dive deep within the company. Just like you would in any international business or any global management textbook, really understanding business practices, managing people, communicating, interacting, protocols. All of these different components are different sections. We then have an exhaustive peer review. And the peer review also makes us stand out from everybody else. So you've got your lead writer. Then we develop the content. We have our own in-house editor. We then work with our peer review to vet for accuracy. And there's usually anywhere from 3 to 5 people who will review for accuracy. And there's some countries, for example, like Mexico, will have 5 reviewers and 5 different opinions on how they see that content. But that's our value. That's our editorial value. So our editorial peer review process is very important. They're all experts. They all bring a layer of nuance. They're diverse by age, race, gender, every combination you can imagine. So we infuse that level of experience and that understanding to come together with final scripts. And then, of course, we have filmed in country. We also film our own business scenes. So we use a combination of that. And certainly we also license some other footage. So it's really a merger of all these resources. And we narrate in-house, and then we produce the video and publish it. So that entire process is something that's really unique. So one of the most important things is others might produce a video. They might decide yesterday we have a topic and they'll produce it like a news source. We're not a news source. We're really an educational learning resource that talks about how a country is evolving and what you need to understand as a business person or as a student who hopes to be in business needs to know to be able to be functional and successful.
So what exactly does Atma Insights cover in scope? I know you went over some of it, but how many videos, how many countries?
So we've got an expanding library. We currently have over 400 videos, and we're adding new videos every single month. So Indonesia is releasing this month, and we'll be having additional titles in Saudi Arabia, also G20. Sometimes people are surprised, for example, that to see some of these countries, but not only are they operational from a G20, but many businesses operate in these countries, and students, when they go into the workforce, have to interact with a number of these countries and these cultures, as well as the business topics. One of the things I like to say about our methodology or our editorial perspective is that we like to think that we're globally centric. So even though we happen to be housed in New York, yes, that's where I am, we are not an American-centric company talking about the world. We truly try to integrate all different perspectives and make sure that the content is relevant no matter where you are from and where you are interacting with. So that's our globally centric perspective. And the second is we have what we call honest optimism. What does that mean? Honest optimism is an extension of our corporate learning, which we feel really works well with our students as well. And that is that you are going to engage with these countries for whatever business purposes you may or may not have. And so it's really about how can you be more effective? How can you understand another culture's perspective and be able to integrate that effectively into your communications, your thought process, your interactions? We actually have a whole section called Cultural Tools, which really infuses this cultural anthropology and helps folks understand how does culture impact our interactions. And that's actually probably one of our most popular collections. But as you can see here, we cover more than 400. We have a number of countries that are coming on board this year and well into 2022, and everything is closed caption. And we hope to add multi-language too at some point soon.
That's wonderful. Yes, What is Culture is one of my favorite videos because it really just lays it out for you and really puts it into perspective of how it really impacts a lot of different places in our lives. So that's great. I think we have a video next as well for everyone that really paints the picture well and gives a great concise 1-minute video that I'm going to share with you next. Let me play that.
Great.
How can you use Atma Insights? Whether you're teaching online or in the classroom, it's essential to have easy access to reliable, engaging, and intelligent digital resources that easily integrate into curriculums for optimal learning solutions. Atma Insights is an award-winning streaming service designed to integrate seamlessly into your business curriculum. Explore our sample syllabi to see how. Videos on essential country, culture, and global business topics address how culture impacts specific operations, including global strategy, business development, mergers and acquisitions, sales and marketing, training programs, customer service, and human resources. A simple monthly or annual subscription provides unlimited access to hundreds of videos, soon to cover 90% of the world economy. Search easily by country, region, or topic. An exhaustive process of checks and balances ensures accuracy, quality, and integrity. Our expert teams create engaging, unbiased, and accurate material that brings each country and culture to life. Learn more, learn faster, win globally with Atma Insights.
Who have our users been? So over the last 16 years, Atma Global's users, we've had over 3 million users, students, educators around the world. So for a long time, almost 40% of our users were international, which really speaks to the fact that we truly are a global firm. We speak across multicultures and different languages. We've been used heavily in the Fortune 500 companies. So a number of companies use our corporate products to help their workforce understand how to do business more effectively with different cultures and countries, whether they're relocating or whether they're frontline customer service folks, or even at the C-suite in terms of operations and management. We've also been used, which is a sort of a fun application. For a long time, we've flown in airplanes as an application on the back of seatbacks. So for folks who are going to travel to another country and they're doing business there, this was an opportunity for them to learn the business culture before they landed. Certainly, the pandemic has made that difficult for a great number of people, but we look forward to that resuming.
So since we have those working in the education space on this webinar today, Sanjog, can you tell them how they could use Atma Insights to support their curriculum development?
Absolutely. So as I said, this is something near and dear to my heart as an educator and also as somebody who writes textbooks. So we've actually created a program called the Custom Educator Program. And what this does is Atma Insights itself is a very easy tool. It's just like Netflix for learning, right? So less than $17 a month is a subscription for an educator, very simple and straightforward. What that also gets you is discounted pricing for students. So just like you would from your textbook publisher, students pay only $10 a semester, just like they would for any other resource. One of the value adds that we wanted to bring through this program is that it doesn't matter what textbook you're using, doesn't matter what course you're teaching. Atma Insights can be a very reliable resource that is unbiased, that you know is vetted, you know that it's accurate, that you can integrate into your course. And we have folks using it for organizational behavior, cultural anthropology, along with a wide variety of different management courses, international business, international management, marketing as well. And to assist educators, and again, because I know exactly how much this can be useful, is we actually will help customize. So what that means is an educator can send us their syllabus, and we will propose suggested video with the link right into their syllabus. So they don't actually have to go ahead and do that work. They can use our suggestions, and it's turnkey, and it's an easy to use solution that integrates for just any textbook that they're using. So this is a program, for example, that we were delighted to win a Stevie's Gold Award just last week. So it's very a very great program for educators to be able to get started right away and very cost effective and time efficient.